In one of the most secure prisons in America, there's a chilling truth no one can ignore. The most dangerous criminals behind bars are not only surviving, they're thriving. Running empires from their cells, their influence reaches places no one thought possible. But here's the question: can a man locked in isolation really still be in control of an entire gang? And if he can, what does that say about the prison system's ability to contain true power? Think about it. A man confined, but holding the reins of a criminal empire. It's enough to make you wonder, just how far does their reach go? Stay tuned, because we're counting down from number 5, the least dangerous of them all, to the most dangerous kingpin at number 1. Trust me, you won't want to miss the shocking reveal of who claims that top spot. Keep watching as we uncover how these criminal masterminds still manage to control their empires from within the walls of Pelican Bay. This story is not what you expect. Pelican Bay State Prison, a name that strikes fear into the hearts of those who hear it. Known for housing the most dangerous, most violent criminals in the country, it's a place where the law's grip is put to the test every single day. But what makes Pelican Bay stand out is the security housing unit, where some of the worst offenders are kept in solitary confinement. This is where we find our kingpins. Men who, despite being locked away in isolation, continue to wield power over their criminal empires. From these tiny isolated cells they send orders, make deals and pull the strings, all while remaining completely out of sight. It's a system built to keep them locked down, but it's also a system they've learned to manipulate. Could anyone really control a criminal empire from behind bars? Could someone isolated in a cell still maintain such influence? Let's find out as we begin our countdown from number 5. Prisons are supposed to be places of punishment, a place where criminals are confined, isolated from the rest of the world. But for some, prison doesn't just become a place of confinement, it becomes a base of operations, a hub from which they control entire networks. Gangs and drug cartels still operate from within these high-security prisons. They control illegal activities, drug trafficking, extortion, even murder, all while locked behind bars. It's a reality that no one expects. And despite being incarcerated, these criminals have an astounding ability to manipulate the world outside. Through contacts, money, and sometimes sheer force of will, they continue to run their businesses, maintain their power, and affect communities far away from their cells. But how do these kingpins stay in control from within those walls? How do they keep their hands on the reins of such an empire, even when they're locked away in isolation? Let's start the countdown and uncover their shocking stories. The truth is far darker than you might imagine. Gerald Kuate Rubalcaba, a name feared within the walls of Pelican Bay. A high-ranking leader of Nuestra Familia, Rubalcaba wasn't just another inmate. He was one of the most dangerous figures in the gang, even though he was confined to the security housing unit, a place designed to break men like him. But instead of breaking him, the isolation seemed to fuel his power. While most of the other prisoners were left to waste away, Rubalcaba turned his confinement into something else, a place where his influence would only grow stronger. From this isolated cell, he commanded a network that reached beyond Pelican Bay, managing operations like a ghost, never seen, yet always in control. How did he do it? How did a man locked in a cage continue to control an empire so far-reaching? The answer lies in his ingenuity. Rubalcaba wasn't just a figurehead. He was the lifeblood of his operation. Through a network of smuggled messages, covert calls, and even subtle handoffs, he communicated with the outside world. It was all part of a system that made him nearly untouchable. His involvement in Operation Black Widow, a federal takedown targeting his gang, seemed to have no impact on his ability to keep the wheels of his empire turning. Even from behind bars, Rubalcaba remained the one everyone listened to. His reach was long, his control absolute. But here's the part that will truly make you question the system. Despite being locked away in one of the highest security units in the country, Rubalcaba continued to control his operations with a simple yet shocking method. He kept the rules of the gang in his own body. His ability to smuggle critical documents, hidden in places no one could ever imagine, allowed him to continue running his empire. It wasn't just the money or the drugs that kept him in power, it was the knowledge, the secrets of the gang's operations, all carried on his body, locked away in a place no one could search, a place where the authorities would never dare look. This simple method, so shocking in its audacity, is what allowed Rubalcaba to maintain control in a system that was supposed to isolate and silence him. Now, think about that for a moment. What would you do if you had to smuggle crucial information in the most extreme way possible? Would you risk everything, your freedom, your life, for the power that comes with it? Stay tuned, because we're about to move closer to our top pick, and trust me, you won't want to miss who comes next. At number 4, we have Cornelio Tristan, a man who seemed to live by one simple rule. Power is not something you gain, it's something you keep, even behind bars. Tristan was a high-ranking member of Nuestra Familia, a gang known for its ruthless control over the drug trade and its violent methods of maintaining order. But what set Tristan apart was his ability to orchestrate everything from his isolated cell in the security housing unit. For him, prison wasn't a place where you got shut down, it was just another arena where he played the game, and he played it well. Even when locked away, Tristan remained the man with the plan. His influence reached far beyond the walls of Pelican Bay, and his network of criminals was as vast and tangled as it had ever been. Tristan wasn't content to just sit idle in his cell. He orchestrated drug deals and ordered hits, all from a place most people would assume is the end of your story, the SHU. But that was not the case for him. He had managed to continue running his empire in a way that no one could have predicted. Even after being slapped with a major federal indictment for his role in orchestrating some of the most violent and profitable criminal activities, he continued to give orders, continued to control the network, and continued to manipulate the people outside. He was a man who had figured out how to make the system work for him, rather than the other way round. But here's the thing that changed everything. Despite being locked in solitary confinement, a place where it's nearly impossible for anyone to communicate or hold power, Tristan's reach extended far beyond the prison walls, and the police, they had no idea. No idea that this would take them somewhere they never expected. Tristan had something up his sleeve, something that would catch the authorities completely off guard. Imagine that. Locked away, isolated, with no connection to the outside world. How could someone like Tristan, who seemed to be trapped, still maintain the control that he had? Could he really be the one pulling the strings? Let us know in the comments as we approach number 3. At number 3, we have James Tibbs Morado, a name that resonates with fear and respect within the ranks of Nuestra Familia. To call Morado a mere member would be a disservice. He was one of the most powerful figures in the gang's history, a man whose authority was felt not only within the confines of Pelican Bay, but across the state, across multiple prison systems. Morado's influence within Nuestra Familia was immense, and despite being placed in solitary confinement in the Security Housing Unit, SHU, it did little to diminish his power. If anything, it seemed to only reinforce it. Being in isolation wasn't a setback for him, it was an opportunity. An opportunity to think, to plan, to control without the distractions of the outside world. Most would think that being shut off from communication would weaken someone, but Morado saw it differently. In that cell, he was still in charge, pulling strings from behind bars, making the calls that mattered most. His very isolation gave him a strange kind of leverage. He had become an enigma, a ghost that lingered within the gang, controlling it from the inside without ever being physically present. He had cultivated such a reputation that even in his most confined state, his commanding presence was still felt. Morado wasn't just an ordinary inmate in the system. He was a true leader, someone who understood the intricacies of power, influence and manipulation, even when limited to a small, solitary space. His involvement in Operation Black Widow, the massive federal investigation that sought to dismantle the criminal operations of Nuestra Familia, brought even more attention to his name. Yet the investigation, which saw the federal authorities attempt to crack down on his operations, barely made a dent in Morado's grip on the gang. The authorities thought they had him cornered. They believed that capturing him and charging him with racketeering, conspiracy and murder would destroy his control over the gang. But Morado had already outsmarted them. Even behind the thick walls of the SHU, he continued to direct operations. His role in the gang was never truly diminished, despite what anyone on the outside believed. He remained a critical figure, still pulling the strings, still making moves. His ability to continue orchestrating everything from drug trafficking to extortion while physically isolated baffled law enforcement. They could see the evidence, they could hear the stories from informants, but they never fully understood how he was able to maintain control when he was supposed to be out of the game. Here's the twist that truly exposes the depth of his power. It wasn't just his orders being followed from afar. Morado was influencing events far beyond his own cell. He was orchestrating complex schemes, still calling the shots, directing gang members, making deals, and even ordering hits, all without ever stepping out of that small, isolated space. His reach was much more extensive than anyone anticipated. It was as though the walls that separated him from the outside world were meaningless to him. Morado was operating with impunity, even as law enforcement was tightening their grip. His gang continued to function with the same level of ruthless efficiency, the same organized chaos, without hesitation, and most importantly, without fear. They followed his commands just as they had before he was placed in the SHU. No one questioned it. He had cultivated an indestructible reputation, and that was all he needed to ensure that the gang continued to function under his direction, no matter the circumstances. Even when the federal authorities thought they had dealt a fatal blow to his operations, Morado's influence was still alive, still dangerous, still at work. Now think about that for a moment. You're locked in solitary confinement, isolated, surrounded by the most secure walls designed to break you. And yet, you're still in charge. You're still controlling an entire empire, still holding the reins of a gang that spans across miles and miles of territory. How is that even possible? How does someone like Morado maintain that kind of influence when he's physically separated from the outside world? The prison system was supposed to isolate him, make him weak, make him invisible, but Morado proved something far more terrifying, that power doesn't just reside in the physical world, it exists in the mind, in the reputation, in the ability to influence others, and he had mastered that art. How do you think Morado maintained control over his gang from the inside? What methods, what tools, what kind of intelligence does it take to manipulate an entire criminal empire from behind bars? Drop your thoughts below, because we're about to move on to number 2, and trust me, you won't want to miss the next name on the list. At number 2, we have David D.C. Cervantes, a man whose story seems almost impossible to believe. Cervantes was one of the top leaders of Nuestra Familia, a gang that controls vast criminal networks, even from behind bars. But what sets Cervantes apart isn't just his role within the gang, it's the way he continued to hold power and control over his operations, despite facing what should have been a major obstacle. He was wheelchair-bound. For most people, being confined to a wheelchair would signal the end of their control, a final chapter in a life of violence and crime. But not for Cervantes. He didn't just continue to operate, he found ways to expand his reach, strengthen his position, and keep his empire intact. The wheelchair didn't limit him, it empowered him in ways that no one expected. David Cervantes rose through the ranks of Nuestra Familia with the same drive, the same ruthless tactics that have made him infamous. His involvement in the gang's drug trafficking, money laundering and murder for hire operations was extensive. But despite the racketeering conspiracy indictment that came down on him and the resulting life sentence, Cervantes showed the world that being physically confined meant nothing when you had the kind of influence he did. Even when the law believed they had put him in his place, Cervantes was already several steps ahead, managing gang operations with an efficiency that baffled the authorities. He didn't need to be standing to command respect. He didn't need to walk to make decisions that had a lasting impact. The real twist here, though, comes when you consider how Cervantes did all of this. How does a man in a wheelchair continue to run one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the world? The answer lies in his ability to adapt. Cervantes wasn't just a leader by title. He was a mastermind who learned how to use the very limitations placed upon him to his advantage. The wheelchair became one of his greatest tools. It changed how people saw him, but it also allowed him to become more relatable, more approachable to those in the gang who might have otherwise overlooked him. He redefined his role and turned a perceived weakness into a strategic advantage. What others saw as an obstacle, Cervantes saw as a way to further entrench himself in the world of crime. His influence wasn't just physical, it was mental, strategic, and unwavering. While everyone thought his condition would make him weak, Cervantes proved that true power lies in the ability to adapt, to redefine the game as you play it. Think about it. Here's a man who had every reason to fall, every reason to let his circumstances break him, but instead he used them to reinforce his grip on power. And it worked. He continued to control operations from within a wheelchair as though nothing had changed. His ability to manipulate, organize, and lead was undiminished. In fact, it was even enhanced by the perception others had of him. People underestimated him. They thought he was done. But Cervantes was just getting started, and his reign continued despite everything stacked against him. What gives Cervantes such power, even from a wheelchair? How does a man bound to a chair continue to lead an empire of criminals who are spread across multiple states? What is it that allowed him to hold so much influence while being physically confined? Let us know your thoughts as we head into number 1. The story of these kingpins is far from over. At number 1, we have Arturo Castellanos, a man who was not just a leader, but a force to be reckoned with. As the leader of the Florencia 13, F13 gang, Castellanos held a tight grip on the gang's operations, not just from the outside, but from within the walls of Pelican Bay State Prison itself. Despite being locked away in the Security Housing Unit, SHU, a place designed to isolate and break the spirits of the most dangerous criminals, Castellanos was far from broken. If anything, his time behind bars only solidified his position as a powerful figure within the gang, and his influence grew more pervasive with each passing year. From within the confines of his small cell, Castellanos continued to control a vast criminal empire, an empire that dealt in methamphetamine trafficking and violent extortion. His reach was so vast that even law enforcement struggled to keep up with his operations, and his ability to orchestrate acts of violence outside the prison walls from his isolated cell made him a truly formidable enemy. Castellanos didn't just control the drug trade, he was at the heart of it. Methamphetamine flowed through the streets, and as the head of F13, Castellanos ensured that the money from those illegal activities kept rolling in, even while he was behind bars. But his power wasn't just about the drugs. He was an architect of violence, a man who could make things happen without lifting a finger. Whether it was orchestrating murders or manipulating those around him to maintain control, Castellanos was the mastermind behind it all. Even in isolation, his strategic brilliance was evident. He wasn't just running a gang, he was running an empire. But here's where things take a turn that you don't see coming. It wasn't just the drug trade or the violence that made Castellanos so dangerous. He was also a symbol of resistance, one that would leave its mark on Pelican Bay for years to come. Castellanos wasn't content with just being a kingpin. He wanted to make a statement. and in 2013 he led one of the most notorious hunger strikes in Pelican Bay history. This was no ordinary protest. Castellanos, along with other inmates, fought against the conditions of solitary confinement, and the hunger strike became a massive show of power, one that caught the attention of the media, the public, and even politicians. What started as a fight for the basic rights of incarcerated individuals turned into something much larger, something that echoed through the prison system and reverberated in the halls of power. Castellanos wasn't just fighting for himself, he was fighting for the control he had held for so long, and he used this strike as a way to remind everyone of the power he still wielded, even in the most secure of environments. Think about it. Here's a man who was already isolated in a maximum security unit, yet he was able to orchestrate a massive protest, challenging the prison system and making the world take notice. He didn't just lead his gang, he led an entire movement, one that showed his unmatched resilience and his determination to remain a key figure in a world that wanted to shut him down. Castellanos was more than just a kingpin, he was a symbol of resistance. His leadership, his ability to control his empire from the inside, and his fight for power made him one of the most dangerous men to ever walk those halls. What do you think? Was it the drugs, the violence, or his unstoppable leadership that made him so dangerous? Let us know your thoughts as we move forward. Now, let's step back for a moment and look at the bigger picture, the true power these men hold, despite being behind bars. We've seen how Gerald Rubalcaba, Cornelio Tristan, James Tibbs, Morado, David D.C. Cervantes, and Arturo Castellanos continue to control criminal operations, influence gang members, and manipulate events from within the confines of some of the most secure facilities in the United States. But there's a deeper layer to this story, a layer that's not just about drugs, violence, or influence. It's about the system itself, a system that was supposed to contain these men, but instead it only reinforces their power. How is it that inmates who are supposed to be locked away can still run vast criminal empires from behind concrete walls? How is it possible that, despite being confined in solitary, these kingpins can still make the moves they need to stay at the top of the food chain? The prison system, with all its security measures, is supposed to separate and isolate dangerous criminals, and yet these men have found ways to manipulate the system to their advantage. They've turned solitary confinement, a place designed to break them, into a tool. These kingpins don't just survive the system, they thrive within it. They exploit weaknesses in the infrastructure, they use smuggled phones, coded messages, and even connections with other inmates to maintain control over gang operations, drug trafficking, and even violent hits from behind bars. The prison system struggles to maintain its hold over men like these. Guards, administrators, and even entire prison complexes are forced to deal with the fact that these criminals can still communicate, still issue orders, and still strike fear into those on the outside. The reality is simple. The prison system is failing to control them, and this isn't just happening in one place, it's happening across multiple facilities, in a network that stretches through the most secure prisons in the country. Authorities and prison officials scramble to stay one step ahead, but it feels like the game is rigged. No matter how many barriers they place, no matter how many walls they build, these kingpins continue to maintain their reach, isolated in small cells, cut off from the outside world, and still they manage to manipulate events and control vast criminal networks. It's the kind of power that most people can't fathom. Absolute control from an isolated place, a place that's supposed to strip away power, not increase it. And here's the real question. What happens when these men, who have shown they can wield such power while locked up, finally get out? What happens when these dangerous men are no longer behind bars, no longer confined, no longer under the watchful eye of the prison system? The truth is, no one really knows what could happen, but the consequences could be far-reaching. For now, though, they remain locked away, but as long as their influence still reverberates through the prison system, there's no telling how much further their reach could extend. Their power hasn't ended, it's only growing. As of today, these kingpins remain locked away, but their influence still reverberates through the prison system. What happens when these dangerous men finally get out? As we come to the end of this story, it's impossible not to reflect on just how much these kingpins have shaped not only Pelican Bay but the entire criminal landscape. These men, despite being locked away in one of the most secure prisons in America, managed to maintain and even expand their criminal empires. Their influence wasn't confined to the walls of Pelican Bay, it extended far beyond, reaching the streets, neighborhoods, and communities they once controlled with ruthless precision. They were the puppet masters, pulling strings from their isolated cells, controlling everything from drug trafficking to violence, even while serving life sentences in solitary confinement. Through their actions, they've shown us that the system isn't as impermeable as it appears. While Pelican Bay may have tried to contain these individuals, their influence reached into the very fabric of society. Their ability to manipulate the system, to maintain power and control despite their circumstance, is both chilling and a testament to their skill in navigating a world that was meant to break them. The impact they've had goes far beyond just the criminal activities they orchestrated. These men were able to influence entire communities, creating fear, shaping local economies, and causing untold harm to countless lives. Their legacy is one of unseen power. They've left behind a trail of violence, broken families, and communities struggling to recover from the damage their operations caused. Yet their story also serves as a stark reminder of how broken the system is and how those at the top, even in the most extreme conditions, can continue to thrive. The ripple effect of their influence continues to reverberate today, reminding us all of just how much power and control a person can have, even when they are locked away. The prison system, for all its supposed security and isolation, couldn't contain them. And while the world may see them as just criminals, their influence, their leadership, and their lasting impact on the criminal underworld and the communities they touched will not soon be forgotten. The true question now is this: how long will their power continue to ripple through the system? And when these men are eventually released, what kind of world will we face? The answers to those questions are yet to be seen, but one thing is certain: the legacy of these men, these kingpins, will linger far longer than anyone ever anticipated. So, what do you think? How is it possible that men locked away in maximum security cells continue to wield the kind of power that can shape not just the world within the prison, but the world outside as well? These men, despite being isolated, have shown that true power doesn't always rely on being physically present. It's about control, influence, and the ability to manipulate systems, to use whatever means necessary to maintain an empire, even from behind bars. It's chilling to think about, isn't it, the fact that these kingpins remain so connected, so dangerous, despite their imprisonment. But the truth is, their power has not disappeared. It's still there, quietly influencing the world around us. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the power these men continue to hold, even from inside those prison walls? Do you believe there are others out there who still have that kind of control? Drop your thoughts below in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss the next shocking story as we continue to uncover the dark truths of the criminal world. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, blessed. Until next time.